What up, Dokkaners? At this point, now that we've had a couple of days into the Golden Week celebration, people are either having fun with the Goku Piccolo, or they're waiting for news on the Part 2, or Goku Day, or both. Depending on when you're watching this video, we might already have the Goku Day information, but I want to talk about when the Part 2 celebration is set to begin. Remember, Goku Day and Part 2 of Golden Week are two separate celebrations. Goku Day will be happening parallel to the ongoing events of this celebration, but Part 2 will still happen on its own later on. What Part 2's LR is going to be, that will be saved for a separate video for a different discussion. For right now, I just want to talk about when. That way you guys can sort of temper your expectations in terms of maybe loading up on content and, you know, burning out on events at a certain point, expecting there to be new content at a certain date. So let's go through this. We'll start with looking at last year, and then we're going to go over a couple of dates that seem like the most obvious candidates for the Part 2's release. So last year, Dual Dokkan Festival for Golden Week started on the 26th at Reset. This year, the celebration started on the 27th at Reset. So we're basically at the same time frame. 27th until the 30th is this year. Last year, it was the 26th until the 29th. So it's the same exact time frame. So that means whenever Part 2 released for last year's Golden Week should theoretically be the same date this year, although certain things have changed. One thing to take note of, during the Part 1 of last year's Golden Week, we had a chain battle happen pretty early on, which allowed for a second chain battle to happen during Part 2. So we had two simultaneous back-to-back chain battles, whereas this year things are a little bit different. This year we have one chain battle starting on the 8th of May. Last year started on the 28th of April, and then again started on the 23rd of April. So this time around, I think we're getting only one chain battle smack dab in the middle. So that is one of possibly a few changes or alterations to these celebrations, which does need to be mentioned because, you know, some people like myself always likes to use previous years as precedent, but there's always a chance things could change, and this is one sign that things are going to be different. That being said, 26th until the 29th, when did Part 2 begin last year? The Part 2 banner released on the 12th. So the 12th after the 26th, that's what? There's 30 days in April. So that's 4 days plus 12. That's 16 days. 16 days into the celebration, we hit Part 2. On the 12th, between the 12th and the 29th, there's 17 more days, or I guess 16 days because you don't count the 29th. So that would be smack dab in the middle. So that makes sense. Why the banner released on the 12th? Well, because it was right in the middle of the celebration, which means the first half is Part 1, the second half is Part 2. And then with that, we got some other stuff, but that's not really important here. So if we look at this year's celebration, if the 27th is when we started, and the 30th is when we end, then if it's the same exact pattern as last year, it would be around the 13th that we would get the Part 2 banner releasing. So let's take a look and count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. So 12th, 13th, we could consider that to be the possible release date for Part 2. Now, there's a couple other things that we can look at as clues to either further support or maybe suggest a different date. So we will cover those just to be thorough, because I don't want to be held responsible if it doesn't end up happening on the 12th or 13th. This is just based on years past. It could happen, it could change. So the 13th is a very strong candidate. Could be the 12th or maybe the 14th if you want to kind of like play fast and loose with the time zones. But two other clues that we can look at: Stone Sales and Elder Kai Ritual Summons. These two dates are sometimes indicative of when banners are going to be releasing. We could also look at the Dokkan Festival summon details. That could also help. Let me actually pull that up too. Dokkan Festival summon details for Part 1 right here. Okay, so let's start by looking at the Stone Sales. Stone Sales says on Friday the 12th of May at 8 a.m. my time, which is the most bizarre time to release a banner. In fact, I don't think there's ever been a banner release in Dokkan Battle history that released in the morning in California. I don't think that that is normal. So that's probably not going to be the case. Let's look back at last year and see if the Stone Sales had any sort of correlation with the banner's release. If the 12th is when the banner came out, the 12th at midnight, so at the crack of midnight, the stroke of midnight, not the crack of midnight, stroke of midnight. Okay, so this actually kind of worked. From the 11th, well, actually, wait. It doesn't show the preliminary date, the start date for the Stone Sales. It only shows the last set of Stone Sales. Let me see. Is it up here? No. Okay. Yeah, so here I can't really look at the Stone Sales and what the dates were beforehand. But this is obviously the same one because they also had the Blue Dragon Stone available. But it was adjusted after the Part 2 celebration kicked off. So I think part 2 started on the 11th, and then 7 hours after reset, we got the part 2 banner. So I think when the banner released the part 2 celebration started, a couple hours later, the stone sales had changed. So if we look at this year's stone sales, if we want to say that the stone sales end at 8 a.m. my time, that would be 4 plus 4, no 5. So that'd be 9 hours before reset. So, you know, at reset, so 9 hours afterwards, the new celebration would start, part 2 would begin, and the new stone sales would emerge. So this actually does still sort of work. The 12th is right before the 13th. If we hit the 13th at midnight, that's when the part 2 banner releases. This actually does support that to an extent. It is very odd, but this does kind of support that. So I think the 13th is still the strongest candidate based on what we've discussed so far. But let's go over the Elder Kai ritual summons. The Elder Kai ritual summons end on the 14th at 11:29 p.m. PDT. Now, for some of you guys, this doesn't mean anything, but let me put this into perspective for you. This is 1 minute before the standard release time of any global Dokkan Festival banner. You know how I'm always saying 6.5 hours after reset? Well, this is 6.5. This is 6 hours and 29 minutes before reset. So 1 minute later, the new set of Elder Kai ritual summons would release. This is not something you should be summoning on, but this is usually pretty indicative of a banner's release because they want you to have the Kais, the means to boost the super attacks of the units that you're pulling if you're not a responsible Dokkaner. So now let's look back at last year's Elder Kai ritual summons, and here there's a little bit of a hiccup. This doesn't quite work because last year, the 26th until the 10th is when we had the ritual summons happen for part 1, and then part 2 started right afterwards on the 10th at 11:30 or 10:30 at the time. Actually, no, it was 11:30. This is just PST until the 29th. So this doesn't line up because the 10th is when the Kais reset, but the banner releases 2 days later. That doesn't quite work. So we can consider this as a possible release date, sure. So, you know, if it's not the 13th, then it would be the 14th, which is still within striking distance. So, you know, this weekend-ish, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I think it's a pretty safe bet to assume this is when the part 2 campaign and the part 2 banner will release. Now, aside from that, the only other thing that we could possibly look at would be the actual Dual Dokkan Festival details. Maybe some sort of a discount date could help sort of shed some light on when the next banner will be starting. So let's see if we can find that in here. I don't have my phone connected, so I can't exactly show you there. Here we go. Event period. So for 350 hours, super multi-summon discounts. So this is the buy 3, get 1 free. This also ends on the 12th morning, 1 hour after the stone sales end. So at 9 a.m. So this is going to be 8 hours before reset. But this is when the discounts go away. So the banner will still persist throughout the end of the celebration. And even the ticket summons will persist even well past that. But the actual core multi-summon discounts, aka the main selling point of the banner, goes away on the 12th. Why would they do that? Why would they not keep this longer? Well, it's because there's probably going to be a shiny new banner dropping sometime soon after this. Now, obviously, it's not going to be dropping 1 minute after this because on the 12th at 9 a.m. would be the most absurd release time for a banner. So it'll probably be after that day's reset when it becomes the 13th, and that should be when the banner releases. So my original estimation is probably the best one. The 13th at the stroke of midnight should be roughly when we receive the banner. Whether it's a carnival or a legendary summon remains to be seen. Whether it's 1 LR or 2 LRs remains to be seen. But just remember, folks, like I said, things are different this year than they were last year. Main one, chain battle is only seemingly going to be happening once during this Golden Week block instead of 2 like we had last year, which is regrettable because, you know, more free stones. Obviously, not everyone's going to hit all of the stones, but you can get up to 20 on each one. So this would have been nice having 2 chain battles. As much as people may hate it, it is the opportunity to get more stones. So with 40 stones last year on the table, this year it's only going to be 20. It is what it is. But the most important thing is pace yourselves because we still have about 10 days, maybe less than 10 days, depending on whenever you're watching this video. But yeah, this should be when we get the release. That's it, guys. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to leave a like down below. Let me know in the comments, when do you think the part 2 banner is actually going to be coming out? Do you think the 13th is a relatively reasonable date? Do you think that that might be too late, too soon? And if you want, feel free to speculate what sort of part 2 LRs you want to see. Maybe we can include some of these guesses in the part 2 LR speculation video coming up soon. Hopefully, I can drop that video soon after this one. Let me know your thoughts about all of this in the comments down below. Also, be sure to subscribe for more Dokkan content in the future and click the notification bell so that you let you know when I do more of my stuff. Do it. Thanks again. Stay tuned and remember to Dokkan responsibly.